Joining me now is radio talk show host Larry Elder. Larry, good to see you this morning, all smiles. Happy Thursday to you. All right, Larry, the president-elect is going straight to companies to create jobs here at home, as he promised on the campaign trail. Is this a trend that will continue into his presidency? You know, I feel like we have to keep reminding people he's still the president-elect. He's not even in office yet.
Well, I hope it's a trend that continues. After all, that's what he campaigned on, going to be a pro-growth guy who's going to get government off the backs of people, going to lower the corporate tax rate, going to stop some of these onerous regulations to fight climate change. And as you've been talking about it all morning, the Consumer Confidence Index hasn't been this high since 2001. The Small Business Confidence Index hasn't been this high since 2009. And the stock market has reacted with the so-called Trump effect. This is all good news.
All good news. We'll see how it translates to the stock market. Everybody's got their eye on that 20,000 level. But this was his focus on the campaign trail. He seems to be coming through on his promises. Now Sprint, jobs coming to America. How can you argue that what you're seeing isn't what he promised? I'm opening this up to my panel here.
Sure. I think that these companies are calling to talk to Donald Trump so they get all this incredible free publicity, that they're bringing jobs back. Because, again, Trump will come out and talk about it, not Carrier necessarily, but certainly a company like Sprint, for example. But, Larry, now the bar is high. Now Trump has to come into office and work with Congress and try to get some Democrats on board who have vowed to fight him at every turn, get them on board and get this tax reform done and get this regulation rollback done. And he's got maybe until July the 1st to do it.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and I just spoke for an hour yesterday with Tom Sowell, the economist who's now retiring from his column after 25 years, and he is worried about the protectionist legislation that may come down the road. Donald Trump, of course, has been talking about tariffs, which makes him the most anti-free trade Republican since Herbert Hoover. It's a real concern. Let's just hope that's campaign rhetoric and he doesn't intend to follow through. But getting the government off the backs of people, lowering the corporate tax rate, rolling back some of these onerous regulations, all of which have, in some cases, caused CEOs to put plants overseas, is good stuff. But this protectionism stuff could very well undermine that.
Hey, Larry, it's Mike Block. You know, we hear a lot about stimulus spending, roads, bridges, et cetera, and here we're talking about job creation. That's well and good, but I'd say that wages have hit a wall here. They're stagnating. What can Trump do to help that? Do you think there's any chance we're going to hear anything about government giving incentives for corporations like, say, IBM or Sprint or whoever else it may be to retrain workers to enhance productivity? Because that's really the key here. Is there any talk about anything like that?
Well, there certainly is talk about this $1 billion or so infrastructure investment program, which I am not down with. There's a thin line between infrastructure investment and pork. When Obama did stimulus, we called it pork. It's not the federal government's job to fix bridges and sewers for local governments. It's their job. And so I hope Donald Trump doesn't do that. But just by not doing stupid stuff, not by raising taxes on rich people, not by jacking up the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which is what the Obama administration wanted to do and what Hillary would have done had she become president, is good news. Rolling back some of the onerous Obamacare regulations. If Donald Trump just does some of that and we get to 4% growth, everybody will be smiling.
4% growth would be a big change, certainly, Larry. All right, meanwhile, tensions rising over the presidential transition. Trump taking to Twitter yesterday, calling out President Obama, writing this: "Doing my best to disregard the many inflammatory President O statements and roadblocks. Thought it was going to be a smooth transition. Not." With his trademark exclamation point. But after a phone call with President Obama yesterday, Trump said this:
"Our staffs are getting along very well, and I'm getting along very well with him, other than a couple of statements that I responded to. And we talked about it and smiled about it."
The White House also releasing a statement on the transition yesterday, writing, "Today's call, like the others since the election, was positive and focused on continuing a smooth and effective transition." The president and president-elect committed to staying in touch over the next several weeks and agreed their respective teams would continue to work together to effectuate a smooth transition over power on January 20th. All right, Larry, it seems to have gotten personal at some points here, if you don't mind. But then we're kind of getting these mixed signals from both teams. How is it going?
Well, it was a very contentious, a very nasty election where Donald Trump was called a racist and a bigot and a homophobe. And I don't think we ought to be too surprised that the post-election transition period has been pretty nasty. In my opinion, I don't know what President Obama is so worried about. He argues that had he had a third time to run again, he would have won, that everything is going well. It's just a question of communicating how well things are going to the American people. He's got the media behind him. He's got academia behind him. He's got historians behind him. I wouldn't worry so much about my legacy. It says something about how insecure he's been about the past 8 years and how tepid this recovery has been. And I don't think he wants his legacy tarnished. And he knows that Donald Trump is doing that very same thing, tarnishing his legacy.
Not tarnishing it, Larry. He's getting ready to tear it apart. From Obamacare, rolling back all of the regulations. President Obama raised taxes on many Americans. Trump is going to pull them back, and he's going to rip up all the regulations, whether you're talking about the EPA and environmental regulations, that on labor and job creators in this country. It's all going to be dismantled if he delivers on promise.
I don't understand why Trump has to tweet all these things, though. There wouldn't be mixed messaging if he didn't just tweet this kind of stuff. I don't understand why. What benefit is there to do it?
That's how he.
Go ahead, Larry.
That's how he won. That's how he won the election. He went around the major media. When you add up Facebook and his Twitter followers, he has a megaphone that he's used to go directly to people, to set his agenda and to shape how people think about issues. I think it's a brilliant strategy, and I think it's going to be the way politicians campaign in the future.
And something that many of his supporters along the way still today have really liked. They feel like they like that direct.
I've said the same thing in the past. Like when he would go after, say, Boeing, for example, when he was tweeting about Air Force One. However, I am so stoked to see him tweet about individual congressmen, Democrats in particular, who get in the way of getting through legislation to reform taxes, because you know he's going to do it, and he's going to call out people by name, and it's going to be awesome.
His incoming press secretary, Sean Spicer, I sat down with him and I said, is he going to use Twitter like this when he's president? And there's all indications that he will continue to do so. Larry Elder, you don't seem to have a problem with it.
I sure don't. I'm active on Twitter myself. I'm active on Facebook. And it's a marvelous way to talk to anybody in the country and have that person respond to you. And I think, again, given how we've seen from the WikiLeaks emails, the collusion with New York Times, with the Washington Post, with the Associated Press, and Donald Trump is able to go around them and communicate directly to the American people, and I think that's wonderful.
Kat, you just had that one request for his continued tweeting. What was it? Spell check?
Yes, check your spelling. Be a little careful, because it does go out to all
Wait,
people.
a millennial actually just said that?
Oh, I can spell.
Right, we'll leave it there.
Not to brag, but I can spell.
Larry Elder, thank you.